Hi folk, Michael here. Have you ever heard about people who live in multiple places or even multiple countries throughout the year? Seems exotic, right? Maybe something for the rich and famous. Well, let me tell you, it's not necessarily that way. In fact, take my personal experience. I live between Europe, where my family is, and I work mostly in the US. So I spend quite a few months in Europe and the rest of the year mostly in the US. So if you stick around in this video, I'm going to share with you my personal experience of this. Not as glamorous, let me tell you, as it first might sound, but there definitely are some pros. So without further ado, where do I call home? That one was a bit puzzling. I would say it was a bit of an enigma because I'm currently in Dublin, Ireland, and that's where I'm actually from originally. But I work over in the US, which is where I spend most of my year. And I guess in Ireland, I'm here for a lot of December and January, but also I spend a long time in the summer, usually May, June, July, and August. So besides answering the question, where is my home? One thing I have found a little tricky is selling physical items when abroad. So just the way it's been, but I've been advertising, for instance, watches. I've been trying to sell a car, things like that. And usually it's the case that I get all the offers the minute I get on the plane and I get over to Ireland. And of course, all of my items, they're over in the US. So I got to wait until I go back. That can be several weeks or several months. And there's all kinds of issues like that trying to sell physical things. So if you're interested in doing e-commerce or drop shipping where you're physically receiving things, or you're just trying to get rid of items, again, like you're trying to sell a car, your own car, or watches, it can be a little tricky. Now, the solution could be having someone with the power of attorney to act on your behalf when you're away. And it's a lot easier if you've got a significant other, friends, relatives, family that can help you out when you're abroad. But this definitely is one issue I've noticed, is selling stuff when I'm abroad. It could be I'm over in Ireland. I was trying to sell a watch while I was in the US for a few months and it didn't sell. But then all of a sudden the good offers start to come in halfway through my trip to Ireland. And I say, sorry, hands up guys, I'm not around right now, so I can't actually sell you the watch for the next 4 weeks or the next 8 weeks or something like that. So that can be a bit tricky. In addition, it could be things like managing stuff. So I find managing stuff from afar can be a little challenging sometimes. This could be, for instance, real estate. So I've got a real estate portfolio, and historically a lot of it was managed by me or by virtual assistants. And really, if you're doing something like real estate, there's almost no substitute for boots on the ground, for local people. It could be that, you contact a vendor, they show up, but they need you to be there for whatever reason. There's some issue or other. It could be that, when you're out, when let's say the cat is away, the mice come out to play. So it's the inspection, the checking up on things like that. So it's difficult when you're away to manage certain endeavors. Now, again, the solution could be just to have quality control people or local boots on the ground property managers, rather than just solely relying, let's say, on virtual assistants, which is what I did when I was starting out. Starting cheaper, of course, you don't want to jump straight into the deep end of the pool first. So that's one big issue, is trying to deal with managing stuff when you're away. It's a little challenging. It could also be, of course, receiving utility bills. Sometimes they come in the post, let's say healthcare bills, taxes, etc. So this can be quite challenging to make sure that you don't miss payments. You're not suddenly in arrears or owing stuff. So it's okay, it's a little easier when you got contacts, but that's also been something I've been kind of frustrated with in the past, especially with medical bills. Like, right, you don't get billed until 1, 2 months, 3 months later, and you're waiting for the bill. The bill comes in the post and you miss it, or something important that you probably would have spotted if you were there to check up on mail. Now, there are solutions to this for the ultra wealthy, etc. when you get into the next level. I'm still working on those, so definitely would appreciate some suggestions in terms of how you guys think about dealing with this. Like, how would you deal with getting these letters in the post and actually, showing them to, so I have signed up for certain services where I can see, oh, there's a mail from such and such coming in the post and UPS, but it's just very challenging, especially with this, still things aren't fully online yet. There's still a lot of services that are halfway houses between physical mail and online things like that. Again, like healthcare is a classic one. Like, sure, if you have an operation or have a healthcare visit, and you might visit, let's say in a January, you might not get billed and you might not have to pay the bill. Even if you ring up, like in February, it's kind of been frustrating for me in the past. I've rang up trying to pay the bill and they're like, no, there's no bill yet. And then of course you go back to Ireland, let's say, in April or something, or May, and next thing you just miss the letter in the post. You come back and they're like, well, where have you been? We've been trying to bill you. I'm like, well, I've been ringing up each time asking to pay. So there's some services are, very difficult to deal with when you're abroad like that. Also some local taxes. Until you have like an asset manager or trust manager, something like that at the higher levels, it's a little challenging kind of going at the mid levels. So one thing that I absolutely love is variety. And that's something you get in abundance when you're living in multiple countries. So it's the different cultures, it's the different venues, etc. It's just so exciting. That excitement is definitely something you get in abundance. So when I'm living in the US for quite a while, I'm really excited about coming back to Ireland, and vice versa. When I'm in Ireland for a while, I'm actually love just going back to the US. So that's definitely something that is a pro or a positive about living in multiple countries. You can see behind me, we have Dublin, and the sea is at high tide right now. So normally all of this, or at least going way out, maybe 100 feet, 200 feet, is all beach or all sand. On the other side, you can kind of see that some of the mountains there in the background. It's a very sunny, obviously January Irish day, so I'm certainly not here because of the weather, certainly not living in the Caribbean. And by the way, whether you're living in the same country, it could be that you've got two different parts, and you could be living in the same state and you may have different locations. It could be that you have, let's say, a vacation place you're living in the same state or by the shore. It could be in North Dakota, the mountains, or it could be in Florida, or it could be in the Caribbean. These are kind of similar when you're living in two different countries. So again, you do get that difference. And as we say in economics, the concept is diminishing marginal utility. So, the idea is that if you have one slice of pizza, it's tasty. But when you have two slices of pizza, it's still tasty, but not quite as tasty as that first slice of pizza. When you get to the 19th slice of pizza, boy, oh boy, that's not really nearly as good, right? It's much, much lower utility. And you get that when you're staying in a place for quite a while, right? That when you're there for a while, it's just not as enjoyable as when you're first there. So you'll definitely benefit from, let's say, living in a place for a short period of time, really enjoying it, and then moving, and then going back again. So each time when I go to Ireland, there's the same venues, the same haunts, the same scenery, but it's different. It's like different every time. I love just going back on my bucket list and seeing, for instance, my favorite restaurants, the cuisines. It could be the drives, it could be the walks. There's just a lot going on, and I love going to those same few things when I come back first. Even my car, right? Even the transport, like just the first time you're there, or your gym, you kind of miss it so much. The people as well, you really do value that a lot because you're away for so much of the year. So that's the one thing. But on the other side of the coin, you do double up on the costs because you have accommodation maybe in two places. Maybe you've got transport, like cars in two places. Could be you've got utilities, subscriptions, insurances, gym memberships, things like that. Now there are ways of minimizing that. For instance, it could be that you find an economic, let's say, accommodation setup where maybe you find an economic Airbnb just for a few months rather than renting long-term for a full year in a place you're only in for 4 or 5 months like me in Ireland. You might rent a hotel or Airbnb if you can afford it. Now, that still could be cheaper. On the other side of the coin, it could be cheaper to find 1 year lease. And in terms of accommodation, or rather in terms of transport, how I deal with that is when I'm in Ireland, I actually car share. So I had a car I owned, and I've got an aunt and uncle who've got a larger family, and they were thinking it'd be a great idea for them to have extra cars. So while I'm away, they basically keep my car running well. And when I'm in Ireland, I drive it. So we both share the cost. The few months I'm here, I drive it, but the rest of the year, they're driving it. So that way, I'm not spending it for the whole year. That keeps that down. But there are gym memberships and other things as well. This is getting a bit rocky here, so I've got to watch the rocks right now. Getting close to the edge. Don't fall, Michael, don't fall. Something that's absolutely free that you can do, and it doesn't matter whether you're already living like a nomad or whether you're not living like a nomad, costs nothing, right, is you can slash that notification bell. Really helps the YouTube algorithm. Other than having, let's say, double costs like gym memberships in multiple countries, you do have tax issues. So that's one thing you got to figure out. So for instance, for me, I'm not a tax resident in Ireland. I'm just not here long enough. I don't work in Ireland, but I am, of course, in the US. So I got to file with the IRS every year. Now, Ireland has a double tax treaty, which makes it simpler. Still, it's a higher tax rate in Ireland. So if I can, that's why I've always been focusing on working in the lower tax jurisdiction. Now, if you're an American person, then it's a little tricky for you because you still owe taxes no matter where you work. Only in, I think, Eritrea and the US is this the case. And when the people found out these poor Eritreans are paying worldwide taxation, it seemed awful, right? They're paying 2%, right, versus the US. So it's different. Most of the countries are territorial. It's only if you work in the country that you owe the tax. So that's something to watch out for. You have to file it. It can be quite complicated. But someone like Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist, he's got some great information that you can do. So I'm thinking in the future maybe of living in a low tax state country, or at least figuring it all out, optimizing it. Something like the San Lucia or St. Kitts and Nevis in the Caribbean. But you don't have to live necessarily there. You could also figure other situations out where you're living in multiple countries. Someone like Nomad Capitalist has some great information on this. So his channel and his services, that is something that I think is the future down the road. But for now, I'm happy to, live and work in the US, but spend, a certain amount of time abroad, other countries. Filing taxes definitely is one of the several things that will be a complication, or could be a complication if you're living abroad. So behind me, that Martello Tower, which was used during the Napoleonic era, watching out for Napoleon ships by the British or watching out for the French. But again, one of the big issues that you get when you're living abroad is the whole aspect of people, right? So your relatives, family, that can be tough. Friends, work colleagues, quite challenging when you're the whole time going away to really form and maintain those strong relations. Of course, you do think about, the differences there when you're abroad, when you're not meeting them so much, but it is challenging. And of course, it's really difficult as well if you're with a significant other, unless the two of you are moving together. That's ideal, but it's very challenging especially when you're in the nascent early stages, like trying to form a relationship. Just good luck with that. It can be quite challenging, especially if you're doing that all the time. When you're living on your own and you're trying to figure out something that's going to work or not. If you are thinking of living abroad, just keep that in mind, that the people aspect is going to be one of the most challenging parts. Just, with your family, you're not seeing them that much, that often, and all of a sudden years go by. And same with friends, friend groups. When you're away for 4 or 5 months, it can be very challenging to start off, and difficult and tricky to start off relationships and things like that and to maintain them. So that is probably one of the most difficult or the hardest parts of living in multiple countries. At the same time, positive part, you do get that different culture, you do get that excitement, different people, right? So it is a fun thing at the same time. And I think that quality of time sometimes matters more than quantity of time. So that is something you're really going to get. People will miss you to a certain extent, right? And when you're with them, you're really excited to be with them. You're really using that time better, because I think if you're always with people, it's different, right? And that's good, but really quality time is probably what matters more than quantity of time. Hopefully, that helped somewhat to give you an idea what it's like to live in multiple countries. Sláinte.
Well, there you have it, folks. Don't forget to subscribe if you felt that this video provided you value. It helps the algorithm, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you so much, you guys. And as we say in Ireland, go mira mi bio ar an tomsha arish.